It's Soul Lounge Primetime. DJ LeRoy, are you?
Yes, I am. NightWatchman, what's happening? Don't seem to be.
Hey. Yeah, it's us looking out over the city or with our own.
Is that it?
That's our helicopter.
Yeah.
We don't like to let people know that. We park it on the roof of Curtis's building.
That's it. So that's how we're rolling now.
That's how we're rolling. Monday night in the city. How are you, DJ LeRoy?
Good, NightWatchman. Where you been, man? I haven't seen you in a little while.
You see me every week on this.
That's true. That's
right.
But in the flesh now, I've been out and about trying to support some of these small businesses, some of these restaurants, you know, Lord knows they're hurting. They're hemorrhaging, man, NightWatchman.
Yes. So which restaurants have you been to?
Well, I actually went to a beautiful affair at the Honeywell. And that's one of the restaurants owned by, as you know, Lauren Bree Lynch.
Yes, a guest on several times on our show.
And exactly.
She's making it work.
Yes, she has literally a backyard right next to the restaurant. Beautiful. Got to come through. All right.
So I understand we're bringing on a trio of guests who are really in the fray, trying to help small businesses in Harlem get back on their feet.
Yeah, these guys are business guys who are literally, in terms of access to financing and capital, they know that. They're also educators. One of them heads up the Manhattan Educational Opportunity Center, or MEOC, at the state office building. I mean, these guys, you know, they are in the thick of it. Now, with, of course, the pandemic, we're going to find out how they've been able to pivot.
Okay, well, let's not keep them waiting. Who we have coming up?
All right, let's see. We should have Mr. Anthony Watson. He is the executive director of the Manhattan Educational Opportunity Center. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing, buddy?
I'm well.
Good. Then another gentleman who knows everything about financing and private wealth, Mr. Richard Shaw.
Good morning.
Hey,
how are you?
Good. How you doing, Mr. Shaw?
Doing very well.
Good. And last but not least, our guy, the one, the only, Mr. Jeffrey Hamer, who we call the Renaissance Man, because not only is he a senior finance and account guy with the New York Business Solutions Center, he's also an elder at the Abyssinia Baptist Church, where he is also a lead tenor. Give it up.
Good morning, everyone.
Okay.
Give it up, guys. All right. So, hey, gentlemen, how's everybody doing?
Yeah, hanging in there, man.
We're doing well, as to be expected.
As to be expected. There you go.
Yeah. Absolutely. So now, one thing I have to say that Anthony, with the Manhattan Educational Opportunity Center, prior to the pandemic, did you guys ever do online classes?
So that's a great question, DJ LeRoy. We actually were kind of toying with the fact of doing online classes to bring a little bit more exposure to those students who particularly couldn't get to the center to do any of the academic classes. But over time, we weren't able to really get it off the ground the way we would have liked, or I would have liked. So the pandemic really pushed us to a place where we had to really be kind of pushed into doing something that may have taken us another year or two to kind of get off the ground. So yeah, no, we didn't do any online type programs prior, but you know, we used to hear people talking to existence. So it's there now.
Absolutely. So you know what? I was thinking that you too, Jeff, in terms of the particular service that you provide, normally I know it had been in person counseling and working with small business owners. How have you been able to pivot?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. It was a lot of face-to-face meetings, getting to know the business owner, And I absolutely prefer face-to-face meetings when you're talking about financing. But we've had to pivot, as you said. And during the pandemic, we've probably done hundreds and hundreds of emergency funding in probably close to $10 million. But that's throughout the city. Initially, a lot of our Harlem-based businesses, especially the restaurants, weren't able to get the PPP loan originally. But the second round, we made some adjustments. We worked with some other institutions to help us get them funded, and we were able to do so.
Gotcha. So I did hear that there had been some issues as related to some of the commercial banks. So were you working with some alternative lenders?
That's right. Yes, we were working with True Fund. In particular, True Fund really came through and helped a dozen or so of my personal clients get funded. So
excellent. Well, now, of course, Mr. Shaw, your client base is, let's say, a little more unique. I would say larger in terms of those who may have some personal wealth. How have you been able to manage this pandemic with your clients?
Well, thank you, DJ LeRoy. It's been, I can tell you that just from overall, it's definitely been a change in terms of how things and how we do things. Similar to most everybody, and specifically within finance, most of what we've done in the past was face-to-face meetings. That has now dramatically changed where we still do face-to-face meetings, but it's via Zoom or via a webcast or a conference call. That has been one big change. The other big change is that, we've been really been proactive in reaching out and touching base with our clients to making sure that they feel safe and comfortable. As most of us have felt right now, there has been extremely a lot of volatility in the markets and a lot of uncertainty as it relates to what's going on directly within our own homes and within our communities. And so it's really trying to give our clients, peace of mind. That's been our primary focus overall. And so in doing that, just reaching out, touching them, making sure that they know that we're here for them. That's been our primary goal and concern.
So I kind of joked about, of course, Jeff being one of the Renaissance guys, doing everything. But Richard, you also have a unique position because you are board chair of HCC, Harlem Commonwealth Council. How's that been going? Because certainly during this pandemic, I guess you guys have not been able to have a board meeting, certainly not in person. But what have you been doing on that front?
Oh, it's been so. Thanks, Roy. I am the board chair, and it's been an interesting time. This has been I'd say the first time we've actually had one board meeting post the pandemic. We had a meeting right before going into the pandemic, and that board meeting has now been done. We did that via conference call, and that's been different from us, where traditionally all of our board meetings have been in person. I'd say this has been a change, and I think all of us are adapting and changing to the new environment. And then so we've been embracing that change, and all of our board members have done that, just as the organization has embraced the change. And so, for HCC, most, if not all of our employees are now working remotely. And so this is this obviously in the new environment that we're in is a safer, more easier way for us to operate within the community. But, our hope is eventually we'll get past this and things will improve. But for now, we're trying to do things in the safest, most effective manner.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Watson, you as well. I know you serve as on that board with Mr. Shaw, and you've also seen this a need to actually have these board meetings as well remotely. I know you also have an advisory council through the MEOC. Have you guys met?
So, we haven't had an opportunity to meet during the advisory council due to all of the kind of the layers of things that are happening within the agency. But I've been in contact with my advisory board individually just to kind of give them check-ins in reference to what's happening, as well as sending out kind of email blasts and other things to keep them informed. We are, scheduled to meet in the beginning of the fall semester to really get things moving. What's interesting about my advisory board, a lot of them kind of run their own organizations, which, during this time, I know that they're really knee deep in all of the structural changes that they had to make. So I've been very mindful of their kind of particular role, as they look to, really handle their organizations, but keep them very much informed about what's happening at the MEOC and what we're doing and how we're doing it. And I've called some of them individually to help us kind of plan other particular activities that related to maybe technology and other resources that I needed in order to move MEOC in the right direction. So they've been very helpful in coordinating and being there for us.
Excellent. What thought actually came to my mind because funny enough, my co-host, the Night Watchman, he also is one of these guys who does many and wears many hats. And one of them is being a part of the Harlem Emergency Network. So please do tell Night Watchman, how have you guys adjusted? And with the Harlem Emergency Network, is the pandemic part of your one of the operating things that you're trying to actually assist Harlem natives and residents overcome?
Well, absolutely. I mean, obviously, Harlem Emergency Network is about helping Harlem residents be prepared for emergencies. This was certainly an emergency of a scale that we hadn't seen in our existence. But we were talking about it early on. I mean, we started our coverage of it in late February and early March. I believe that we did a show really just before things really went south. I think it was maybe March 8th or March 9th that we did a show talking about it. We tried to, number one, fill in what we thought were gaps in the information that we were getting from some of our city and state agencies. We particularly focused on trying to inform people about, number one, actual safe protocols. We felt like there was not enough information about how to actually handle things if you were in a house with somebody who you suspected had COVID-19. It's great to wash your hands and do social distancing when you're outside, but we have people in Harlem and in the Bronx who might have 8 or 9 people in the household and one of them has COVID. And how do you now create a quarantine environment within a small enclosed space? So we did a lot of information on that. We talked a lot about boosting the immune system. We emphasized vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc, and we tried to be specific on those because we recognize that number one, in the middle of an emergency when everything is shut down, it's not like everybody had an access to go say, I'm going to run out and get a bunch of supplements to help boost my immune system, because at that point in time, all the shops were closed. But most people have vitamin C and vitamin D around, but maybe did not realize how protective they could be of your immune system in this specific situation. We also were concerned that in giving information to elders, and this is something I kind of know personally, talking to elders and you want to talk to them about magnesium and selenium and some things that could help you. And a lot of elders like, I don't know nothing about that. But if you talk to them about vitamin C and vitamin D in particular, in my case, when I'm talking to my mom, I know I'm not going to get pushback on things that she told me I had to take as a child. So so we tried to keep the message simple, direct, and effective, and just continue to talk about protocols. And so we had our members who had masks on early on, and I recall an early before people really got what this is, that one of our members wore a mask to a family gathering and he was ridiculed. But weeks later, everybody thanked him. So
yes,
so
the
that's
winds of change for sure,
yeah.
and adjustment for
Yeah.
sure.
So what we're dealing with now is just, and I want to ask everybody about this, is now that we're in this phased reopening, and yet we still have issues about whether it is gone for good, whether it's coming back, and then we have a lot of angst around, the opening of schools in just a few short weeks. So maybe you all could share with us how the reopening has affected your operations, and what do you see on the horizon for the next 2 or 3 months?
Well, I'll go.
Okay.
Seeing that I'm also in education. So I think that, as we look at the reopening, we're very, very careful on how we open, because, we want to safeguard the students that we serve, but we also want to safeguard the staff and faculty that are in place. So, over the last, I would say, we went into the kind of pandemic and the shutdown in March about 19th, where all staff were particularly asked to stay home and begin working remotely. And from that point, I created what we call a continuity plan to really begin to look at, what people are going to do on a remote basis, right? So during that process, I also started looking at, what does reopening look like? So we started really developing a plan in April, May, in reference to the reopening. Of course, things have changed on a daily basis as far as, the pandemic and what the rates would be and how it would be predicted. But one of the things that we've done at MEOC is really look at what the fall semester is going to be like. So one of the things I like to say is that we never stopped or closed our doors. We just really moved to remote. So we created the infrastructure at the center, and I call MEOC the center, so that people can still provide services. So when I look at infrastructure, we kind of looked at a 4-phase approach. When we looked at infrastructure, like a hybrid program, 50% into classrooms, and then like fully back to school. So right now we're in the infrastructure phase, as well as phase 2, which is our online platform. So right now for summer sessions, all students are getting classes remotely. We've provided kind of tablets and laptops for those students who may not have had. And for the fall, we're looking to really move collectively into the online platform. So what will happen is, because we have training programs that are kind of geared to both the academic as well as the vocational. Academic is a little easier to do remotely, whereas opposed to like our vocational, is a little bit more challenging due to the fact that, there's some activities, like when I say allied health, so our CNA program, our phlebotomy program, there's certain things that you must do in person in order to, get your certification. So we're looking at, what that hybrid would look like, sometimes in classroom and sometimes online through distance learning. So it's kind of ever moving, but I think one of the things I will say is that we will not be back in the fall 100%. Some sort of hybrid approach moving into the fall semester, and then really looking and evaluating what that's going to look like in the spring's time. So we're taking every precaution that we can, and looking and listening to the governor's plans, as well as, because MEO sits between SUNY and CUNY, we're also working in collaboration with both CUNY and SUNY to ensure, you know, that we do things in the appropriate fashion, but also still provide the service that our community needs. So.
Exactly. And I'm definitely thinking that with you based at the state office building, there's no possible way that they're going to be able to actually host full capacity.
No.
Just, yeah.
No.
Well, do tell the, so Richard, besides some of your high net worth clients, some of the smaller folks, so what is Bessemer looking at and doing in terms of the reopening?
Well, I think, you know, the most important thing that the plan has really focused on is, you know, primarily the safety of obviously the employees and the clients, but particularly as it relates to its employees. Right now, we're 100% remote. We do have a few employees that go in because there are some key critical functions that still need to be done within the office, but it's a very small percentage. And so the approach that we're looking at in terms of actually reopening is looking at a phased approach, and it's going to be over a couple of different phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And those phases and how we're looking at reopening is really going to be driven by a number of factors, including obviously looking at, you know, guidance coming from the CDC, what's coming out of the governor's office, what's going on in terms of our landlord, in terms of our specific landlords. And the reason why what's going on there at landlords is important is because, you know, we have 20 different offices, over 20 offices, you know, nationwide. And so being able to coordinate what's happening within each of those different offices and making sure that protocols and guidance are in alignment with basically ensuring the highest degree of success and making sure that our employees are safe. And so, you know, one of the things that we're also doing is that obviously if you are going to the office, you know, you have to do a questionnaire to make sure that you actually do need to go in there, and that if the questions it's going to ask you, you know, who you've been in touch with, you know, what, you know, have you been sick, things of that sort. Because what we're really trying to do is ensure that each employee is safe when they go in. And so these are the key considerations. And so with this phased approach, you know, the first 2 phases really is more being left up to the employees and to the manager, whether or not the employee will be coming into the office. And then in the latter part of the 3rd phase is when, you know, there really needs to be, we're trying to really reopen fully. I would say is that when we're looking at this phased approach, we're still very, very much in the early phase of this whole process, because, you know, right now we haven't even, a lot of the data that's out there, you know, doesn't really support our reopening. And so at this point, you know, we've been extraordinarily successful in helping and working with our clients remotely. And we are going to continue in doing that because it's the safest thing for us, the employees, and it's the safest thing for our clients, because we don't want them to come into the office or to see us if it's unsafe for them. And so, you know, the safety of the employees is the most important thing. So that's how we're looking at doing it in a thoughtful manner, in a thoughtful phase manner is how we're looking at approaching this.
So, Richard, sure, I'm not hearing from you. I'm not hearing science be damned. So you're actually going to listen. You're going to listen to the experts. Is that correct? So you're not taking any directives from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue right here.
What directives?
I will tell you that we are letting the data lead us. The data, gotcha. We are very data focused. So it's the data is leading us in how we're actually doing this. And so, which is
Richard, I've got 2 questions for you. One is more on a personal note. What has been the adjustment like working from home? And also a follow on is seeing how this is working, do you see a long-term implication for your company in terms of how you actually work? Do you see yourselves maybe trimming down your office footprint and make this more of a reality?
So I will try to answer both. So the first is that the change in working from home, it was initially, I thought it was a little, I'd say, bumpy, in that when we first moved to remote, so we went remote early March, or probably the first or second week in March, when we actually went remote. And at that point in time, I will tell you, is I had this old PC that I used to log in to just do my email. And I realized very early on that was not going to work as a solution. At that point in time, we were still thinking that the virus was going to be, we were going to isolate, and then, I think a month or two from now, we would be back in the office. But I figured it was an opportunity for me to upgrade my technology. So that's what I did.
Nice.
And I will tell you, I was very fortunate in terms of getting ahead of the curve and doing that, because that made my life extremely easier. I got a new laptop. I got a couple of big monitors. I had a whole home office. And so we are now in our 5th month. I think we're going to probably hear a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And we're in our 5th month, and the transition has worked well. And I think that, as a firm, we have been very effective in terms of being able to do our work. I will say is that, it's different working remotely than working in the office. I miss, and I think all of our colleagues miss the camaraderie, the conversations that you had bumping into people in the halls, or people stopping by your office, all those different types of things. And you no longer have that. You do get to have face-to-face via Zoom, but even that it's just not the same. I do a lot of Zoom calls, and Zoom is just not the same as having a person being there directly with you. And so that is the change. I'm comfortable doing it now. And I think, and so it's grown on me. Do I think that this is going, now I'll go into the second question, which is, you asked, do we foresee this being a change in how we work? I'd still say it's still early. I think, as a firm, we've been really effective in terms of working remotely. But, we've done surveys, and we've spoken to many of the people within the organization, within our firm. And there's still a very large percentage that prefers the in-office space, and having an office and being able to go to that. I think that what is going to occur, and this is my own personal view, is that it's going to kind of migrate and change, where I think, we'll have a little bit more flexibility. We'll still have office space, which we'll go to when it's needed for meetings, and, when you're going to talk with other colleagues and things of that sort, where you want to go into the office. But then that will also shift where, if you don't need to do anything, you may work remotely. And this is going to be something that we'll work on and work with. It's going to be a team by team, manager by manager basis that you'll be able to have that. But I think there'll be more flexibility built into the model in terms of, this is just not, where I work out, but I think throughout Wall Street and throughout in finance and throughout many of the other businesses, is that there's going to be more flexibility on how we do things in the future.
Excellent. You know what? I'm also thinking with Jeff. I certainly know the state's protocols as it relates to the opening. On the city side, what have you guys been mandated to do?
Well, at the moment, everyone's still working remotely. Folks do go into the office on occasion to take care of specific things, but what we have learned is that we've been able to be very productive and effective working remotely. That's the safest thing to do right now. So at least for the time being, I think that's going to be the trend. It's just to continue to work from home, stay safe. We're able to serve our clients. We're offering online courses now, pro bono legal services, be it Zoom, different things like that, conference calls. So for the time being, that's what we're doing.
Well, now you are also wear the hat of being an elder at the Abyssinian Baptist Church.
I'm a trustee.
A trustee, thank you.
I am an elder. I'm a trustee.
So do tell, being a trustee with the church, how's that been going? Because we know coming from a strong Christian background, people are egging to get right back into the congregation. How's it been going? And how's Reverend Butts been handling it?
Very well, actually. So yeah, I mean, this caught everyone off guard, initially, but we very quickly pivoted to an online service. Invite you guys to check it out. Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. It's a shorter service for those of you that that was a little bit challenging in the past. But it's been absolutely wonderful. We don't have the full choir. The full choir would have been about 60 or so folks singing on any given Sunday, and so now we only have about 6. And they rotate here and there. I haven't been back yet singing.
Okay.
But the service has been great, and the viewership has really grown over the last couple of months. So yeah, no, things are working. As far as when we'll get back to whatever the new norm will be, is anyone's guess. But for the time being, it's working.
Gotcha. Well, you know what? It's interesting. Anthony, I certainly, as you know, I have a young one who is a sophomore in college, right? And needless to say, with him adjusting to this online stuff, man, he is not enjoying it at all. At all. He's missing his roommates, his suite mates. It's, one of these things where the motivation for actually receiving the content online and then being able to, as they say, push it back in terms of exams, it's not been happening without the incident.
Yeah, absolutely.
How have your students been adjusting, man?
So it's interesting you say that, because I have 2 boys who also are in college, and one of the things my oldest son said to me the other day, which was very interesting, he was just like, the online stuff is very challenging at this point, and he didn't say it was challenging because he couldn't kind of get a handle of it. He said it's challenging because he didn't start off doing online classes from the beginning. So the expectation of him starting the online classes in the midst of the semester made it more challenging, because people had different teaching methodologies when it came to teaching lessons, because at the same time faculty and staff had to also adjust at the same time that students. So when you ask the question in reference to how our students are doing, some students did really well, others struggled, and you begin to really notice the gaps when it comes to kind of economics and the economic disparities in our community, and those who may not even have what we call Wi-Fi or broadband in their homes and can't afford it. But then, we were under this assumption that, people got cell phones, they can kind of get on, but then the plans and the phone setups weren't created for them to really do lessons online. So there was a lot of students who were really had a gap in when it came to just being ready, and not to any fault of their own. And we also have faculty and staff who also had that same level of a gap when it came to just being able to remove from in-person to remote. So, some students did okay. Others were very much challenged. The majority was very much challenged. And one of the things that we tried to do, and I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier, was that we tried to provide technology with equipment and other things, working very closely with CUNY and SUNY to make it happen, because we saw that it was a meeting, but that also was the case for staff as well as students. So they've adjusted, but I think that now moving into like the fall semester and the summer, we're a little bit better prepared in how to kind of navigate the storm, as we would say. So it's been challenging, but I think that we kind of begun to look at some remedies for it. I think that reality, some people like to be in person and learning, and others were okay with the online moving, but it was just the way in which it happened so quickly that brought on the challenge that it did.
Definitely. And if there's one thing that the pandemic has been able to expose, has been not only the health disparities, which we know, but also the economic disparities significantly. And Anthony, you highlight that. I do know that on your advisory board, you do have Clayton Banks of Silicon Harlem. Has there been any a coordination there in terms of access to broadband that you guys have been working on?
Absolutely. Actually, Silicon Harlem was very helpful in trying to leverage resources for our students who didn't have broadband to get them connected. So Clayton Banks and his team worked with my team to really begin to give people access to that. Some were able to get access, others were still kind of waiting on. But it's because everyone was looking for broadband and internet at the same time. So you have thousands of people looking for the same service, and we had a short window of time to provide those services. It becomes it becomes that whole thing of supply and demand, right? So so we were faced with the demand, but not the supply. But him and his team have been extremely helpful in really leveraging the conversations, getting us in the door to speak with people who are in the kind of broadband Wi-Fi network. So that's been very helpful, because now we have resources and people that we can connect to make sure that our students do have levels of access when moving in. But as anything, people were very much providing free for a couple of months, but now that's going to be moving to a cost. So
absolutely,
economics, it impacts our students a little bit differently. Even if it's $25 a month or whatever, there's still an impact on whether I need to eat or whether I need Wi-Fi. So
absolutely, and that's one of the things I was thinking. So, NightWatchman, in terms of the Harlem Emergency Network,
Yes.
You guys are organized as a nonprofit organization, correct?
Well, yeah, we operate under Citizens Emergency Response Network. That's our 501c3, and so we serve both. Harlem Emergency Network focuses on Harlem, but CERN overall also does a lot of things in the Bronx as well.
Gotcha. Now, all those here, who has been able to apply for any interest in PPP? Anyone? Anthony, nah?
No. As far as we have purchased a PPE, but we haven't done anything in reference to looking for funding to get.
Okay.
One of the things that we are looking to, but I mean, I think it's a little bit different than your kind of original question. We're looking at particular proposals and grants that may support kind of the new environment when it comes to types of trainings that we need to do in order to support the new norm, as I think Jeff had mentioned about the new norm. So we're looking at, what types of activities and programs that we could provide so that our constituent base, our students, are ahead of the game when it comes to workforce development and other entities. But on the PPE side, we purchased masks and gloves, and even before we left.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant PPP,
Oh.
payroll protection program.
I'm sorry.
But I hear you with the PPE.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Get your acronym straight, DJ LeRoy.
That's what I said. but I definitely hear you in terms of PPP, PPE. So speaking of with you, Jeff, in terms of working with the small business community, have you been providing them with a holding hands through the PPP process, helping them fill out that?
Absolutely. I mean, that's taken up the majority of the time that we spent working with small businesses, is helping them, one, gain access to PPP. As I mentioned, a lot of our folks weren't able to get funded that first round, and majority of them were with the larger banks. But second round got them to some of the alternative lenders, and they were able to get funded. So we were very happy about that. But now it's, forgiveness for the PPP. How do you qualify for that? Should we return the money? It's just a lot of questions now that a lot of them have received it. What next? Because there's just so much uncertainty. You don't know how your business is going to fare in this new economy as it is right now. There's a lot of hand holding, a lot of talking.
Got you.
Jeff, did we see a lot of attrition in terms of businesses that are not coming back?
So far, I haven't. I've heard of, one or two, but I think for the most part, everybody's, just trying to hold still, hold on, and just kind of see how things are going to shake out.
And what are the challenges that they're seeing now that we've got this phased reopening that kind of partially gets you open in some cases, but you have these restrictions? How are businesses coping with just the uncertainty and the changes from day to day in terms of what actually is being required of them?
Yeah, they're not, right? I mean, it's incredible, the anxiety that most of them are feeling. Some are able to just take it in stride and believing that the universe, that God will provide, and there's a lot of faith being exhibited. But a lot of the small business owners are feeling the anxiety of just not knowing, right? So, the city, the state will mandate certain things, and then, when it comes time to actually reopening, they change, and you understand why, it's really trying to keep everybody healthy, but it's hard on the business owners. And to try to survive on a small percentage of what your revenue used to be, is a big challenge.
And how about the negotiation with landlords? How is that working?
Yes, I mean, there's some situations where the landlords, at least to this point, have been very understanding and trying to work with the business owners, but that's starting to fade, I think. They're like, we got to do something. We got bills too. Understand it, but it's tough to get blood from a stone.
I was. Go ahead, NightWatchman.
Well, I want to ask Richard, what is the impact of all this in terms of the focus of Harlem Commonwealth Council? How are you guys? Has your mission changed or shifted as a result of all the things that we have transpired this year?
No. So I think when you think about Harlem Commonwealth Council and what we do and our impact in terms of the community, the mission still remains the same, which is, economic development within the community of Harlem, and then also providing and helping with education. And that mission still remains the same. When you look at this, and look at the virus and the impact that it's had on our community, I think what has changed is the businesses and the people who we're helping. If you look at, Jeff works at Harlem Commonwealth, and he knows and he can tell you directly how we're helping and assisting businesses in terms of PPP loans, how we're helping and assisting small businesses in navigating the best way to work through this challenging, very, very challenging environment. A number of businesses, as you just already admitted, already noticed, is that the rules of the road change depending upon the day or the month that we're in, and that is well noted because of the virus. And so it's very, very challenging. So the goal is to keep businesses, to keep them here, to keep them going. And we're doing that in terms of advising, giving loans, and being part of the community. We're also trying to help in terms of on the educational side and providing outlets for students and providing there. And so, overall, I think how we're looking at this and what we're trying to do remains the same, but the mechanisms and the means of how we're doing it has changed.
I was kind of curious, Richard, with Bessemer. Now, certainly you have high net worth individuals, no doubt, who possibly also have businesses, right? So I was wondering if Bessemer have, let's say, also relationships with, let's say, some of the banks that may have extended loans through the PPP that you know of?
So I will tell you, not that I know of. So we focus specifically on the high net worth market, ultra high net worth market, and so we are our own bank and trust firm, and so we don't have direct relationships with other competitors because we compete with a Wells or a Goldman, or we compete with those other firms. So we don't have direct relationships with them. We're also unusual in that we don't have any debt, and we're not out lending funds. We're not like a retail bank. And so those banks, we're charged with going out and doing that. Our institution is specifically related to helping the clients that we work with manage and grow their wealth. That's where our focus is on. And so that's how we're a little bit different, but than any of the other traditional commercial banks that you know.
Gotcha. Gentlemen, in this new paradigm, are we ready to go forward with what might be, let's say, a slightly different working environment? Oh, no, dramatically different work environment in terms of, let's say, maybe staggered days that we go into the office and the other time we're at home doing it remotely. Someone take it.
I think I'll start off with that on this one. DJ LeRoy, I would say is that I think that will be the new model, at least in the short term, when we do eventually go back to the office. But I think right now, I think it's in all of our interests, especially, this is nationwide, is to basically isolate, wear masks, and do, just wash your hands, just the basic things that we need to do in order to stay safe. And so, but I do think that you could eventually see when we do start going back in, it's more of a staggered schedule. And the reason for that wide staggered is that you can't have everybody going back in all at the same time.
Right.
You have to have it that it's going to be spaced out. And so, I think the world that we're in now, the world I call it the world post the virus, is going to be slightly different than the world which was before the virus. That's not to say it's going to be, better or worse, but it's going to be different. And that, it's incumbent upon us to change our behaviors and how we react and how we interact in order to make ourselves safe, make it safe for everybody that we're dealing with and we're interacting.
Got it. Anthony.
So I got a personal question to ask everybody. So we've been on lockdown for a few months, and now it's summer, and now that things are opening up, I'm thinking like, wow, it would be great to just kind of get away. There's nowhere to go.
Exactly.
So first of all, the United States is now quarantined. No, they don't want to see anybody coming from here going anywhere.
They don't.
And then we have a quarantine within the United States that other states can't travel here without going through a quarantine. And probably we can't go somewhere without coming back and being quarantined. So how are you guys just coping with just the personal dealing with being confined? Do we get away? How do we get away? How are you guys dealing with it? Because I need to know.
Taking it one day at a time, man. Staying home. Not really trying to go, I would love to go away for a weekend or something. And
the Hamptons, buddy. I know.
Hamptons, yes. It may happen, but
okay.
I haven't done it yet. But yeah, it's the only thing you can control is your own actions, right? And so to stay safe, you just got to stay home, and you got to hunker down for a little while longer. It looks like so.
So no, we're not going to Disney World.
No, definitely not.
and of course, Anthony, going down to North Shakalaka or what?
No, man. My wife's sister was actually getting married this summer, and she's in Washington State. And we decided not to travel because of the long haul. But I think just being intentional also about, because you had asked the question in reference to what are we doing and how you dealing with the hunkering down. Just being more intentional about being with the ones that are close to you at home. Kind of set time aside to ensure that you guys spend quality time together, opposed to kind of getting at each other. So being intentional about okay, we're gonna do this today, and creating, with my wife and I, we create date nights now at the house.
Nice.
We make sure that kids and everybody else is also entertained. So we also have movie, so we try to do things that are going to keep us sane, but also try to figure ways to be, to one another. I give you a joke. We always know when we need some air, because we say, okay, I'm going to the store. So one person will go to the store and leave you in the house by yourself, so that means they need some calm load, their mask, their gloves, go out the house. They leave about 2 hours. You ain't got no money. Where you going?
Right. Ain't got no money, no place to go.
We need a little break. That is so true. That is
exactly.
So
true. So Night Watchman, how we doing there, buddy?
I think we're kind of in wrap up mode right now.
Okay. Cool.
We appreciate all of you gentlemen for sharing your time and expertise and insights, especially in terms of how to cope. DJ LeRoy, you didn't break any secrets about how you maintain.
Well, I have to say, as you know, my wife, she is a voiceover actress, and one of our rooms in the home has been converted to her studio.
Right.
And she also has a new gig where she's doing radio imaging for a new network called BIN, Black Information Network. As a matter of fact, if you are on iHeartRadio, just type in BIN and you'll actually see it. And so the one thing that I have to do, I have this time right now that I can speak with you guys.
Right, but when the clock
That's right. That's right. When she's recording or whatnot. So no, but it's really going good. She is like I said, just wonderful in how she's been able to really pivot and adjust, because remember she had another gig where she worked for an event planning firm.
Yeah,
and there's one thing that we know: those things are off the table.
Yeah.
right.
So when one door closes, another door opens. So
and if another one doesn't open, go through the window.
Yeah. Thank you, Night Watchman. Yes. No, you know what? These guys, like I said, are brilliant. And so I guess as we get a little bit further, let's say 6 months to a year out, we're going to have you guys back to say how things are going.
Well, I'm hoping that we can see them all in a less socially distant setting sometime in a little less distant future.
So Night Watchman, what are you talking about? Are you talking about Lennox Sapphire? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm not saying any names. I'm hoping all of those fine establishments that we have spent our money in the past. I hope that they're still there.
Yeah.
So you know, I'm going to leave that to you, the band leader and social coordinator, DJ LeRoy, to pick the spots. And you have to vet them for us to make sure that the beverages are cold and the company is warm.
Well done. Well done. Well, gentlemen, are there any parting comments that you would like to make? Okay. Because like I said, I'm truly blessed that you guys came on the show. So, Jeff.
Now, it was just a pleasure being with you guys for this brief moment. You know, haven't seen you guys personally, in person in a minute. So it's just been good to chat with you, and would love to come back.
Perfect.
Right.
Richard.
No, I echo Jeff's comments, and it's been great. It's a pleasure. And I have to say is that it's nice, even though we don't get to see each other in person, in real life, seeing you via video is it's the second best thing, and I appreciate it. And I do look forward to the time when we actually can go out and do this face to face. And thank you, and I look forward to an invite.
Excellent. So, Mr. Watson, close us out, buddy.
So I will echo what Jeff and Richard said. But you know, one of the things that I'm very, you know, it's so nice to see, and excuse me how I use it, see brothers who are in positions to make change and really empower others. You know, so I truly appreciate you having kind of me on the show, and you know, the other guests, because it's amazing that, you know, sometimes we don't get an opportunity to tell our stories, and this is a story in itself, having these two brothers on who are doing some amazing things and really thinking about the community as a whole. So anytime you can get us together to talk and brainstorm and just come up with creative ideas and things, it's a win. So, you know, I was always taught that, you know, you count your wins. At least there's one win a day. So I count today as a win. That, you know,
absolutely.
Like that.
All right, so DJ LeRoy, I'm going to take us out by getting our drone up there and running. Soul Lounge Primetime live on Monday night, 7 o'clock. We also premiere on YouTube at 8 o'clock on Monday nights. Thank you for all our guests. Stay safe, and we will see you all next week.
You got it.